Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin'. Today we are out on the road. We're trying a brand new lake together. Come along, it should be fun. I'm really looking forward to today. I love this style of fishing, the swamp type environment. We're here at random. I know nothing about this lake, but I'm pretty sure every swamp in the country has largemouth in it. I'm out on the road, and when I'm out in the evenings, I literally look at Google Earth and I look at my One Boat Network, because on my One Boat Network app on my phone, I have all the VX maps downloaded so that I can just sit there and just look at lakes, and we truly pick our stops at random because I love fishing new fisheries. There's nothing more fun than going to a place you've never been, figuring it out, and successfully catching fish. So it had been about a year, a little less than that, since I dropped into a swamp type lake. You know, shallow, tons of cover, standing timber. I love this style of fishing. I'm looking forward to it. We'll probably do a lot of flipping today, a lot of Texas rigging, maybe some reaction fishing. I don't know. I have no clue what we're in for, but I'm looking forward to getting started. Let's do it. There's one. Awesome. There are bass in here. That first one, that is a critical fish. You need to know. I'm just Texas rigging a June bug worm, flipping the bases of the cypress trees. Just old school bass fishing. This wind is freezing cold, and that is not normal down here. That is probably really bad for the bite, but we fish the conditions we're dealt, right? We're here today. We're fishing today. But it's cold. We fished for about an hour and a half, maybe longer. I haven't actually looked at the clock. We've had one bite and we caught that fish. I felt really good about that, but I don't like that we haven't had a second bite. I've changed worm colors a couple times, thrown a chatterbait, thrown a swim jig. We're just gonna keep going. We will figure it out. If you had told me that I was going to throw an A-rig in a cypress swamp, I would have laughed at you. But these cold conditions, this isn't normal swamp temperatures. Nothing about today feels right. I've thrown a chatterbait, and I've thrown big worms, thrown small worms, thrown a swim jig. I sat down and really thought it through, because as I've been cruising around on this little lake, I found some deeper edges than I expected. Water that's like 12 to 14 feet deep. And I thought, you know what? If I was anywhere else, this is what I would do right now, just to find out. So I put it on. Kid you not, that was my second cast with the Tactical Mini. Oh, that's a fish. fish. And a good one at that. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. That was so subtle. We're gonna need a net. That is the one that we were looking for. My goodness, pick a lake off of the map. Just go fishing. Never would have thought we'd be a-rigging. It's not what I had in my head, but here we are with a beautiful, beautiful bass. Amazing. All right, let's get this girl back in the water. Thank you. Awesome. You just never know what you're gonna run into when you're out on the road. This is the last thing I thought I was gonna run into. I thought we would be flipping standing timber with big worms. That's what I had in my head. You've gotta be willing to adapt. You never know when that wind's gonna start blowing. That was not in the forecast. Air temps have crashed. I don't know what it is, but it's way colder than it should be this time of year. Water temps have not risen at all today. Just not the conditions I expected, but you roll with the punches, you adapt until something starts working. All right, guys, I just got a mag draft freestyle stuck on the bottom. I'm gonna show you how I get it out. We did a review of this last year, this toothy Fishman retriever, but essentially it's just a big lure retriever, a big hound dog. We're gonna thread our line through the eyes and send this down the line. When it hits the bait, it's a balance. You want the line tight so that it comes down and hits the bait directly. But right as it hits, I slack my rod to give it room to knock it free. So keep it tight on the way down, slack it on the impact. We'll go ahead and send this down. First, I need to pull off a bunch of line. You know, you can tie these things to braid. I tie them to paracord, whatever you prefer, just so you don't lose your retriever too. Myself a little bit more line here. I'm gonna put this on the line. There we go. And you want to be over the top of the bait, but not right on top of it. I like a little bit of slope. I'm gonna get a little closer to it. All right, let's send it down. That easy. I don't know if you saw, but right as the weight hit, I dropped my rod, and that lets it punch that bait and knock it backwards. There we go. Just saved me a bunch of money. If you guys don't carry some kind of lure retriever, you are throwing money down the drain. I use both this style and the pole style. I use the Fraybill pole, the extendable pole. That works the best for A-rigs, where you can twist it over that A-rig and pop it free. Another one on the rig. Who would have thought? That's awesome. A bass is a bass. Doesn't matter if they're living in a swamp or a clear water reservoir, a bass is a bass. Eating those 4-inch swammers. So much fun. fish knocked slack in that line. Awesome. Knocked complete slack in it. That was fun. I'm just out here on the deep transition. It's shallow up there where the trees are, like 3 to 8 foot, 3 to 9 foot, and then it rolls out to deep water. And I'm just fan casting where these outermost trees are, the ones that stay out away from the rest, and I'm getting the occasional bite, and they're all really good fish. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. We were able to catch a limit of bass, including a great big kicker. I couldn't ask for anything more when exploring a new lake. Now, today was full of challenges, make no mistake. And I wanna speak to that, the process of fishing a new lake, because I think it will help you, whether you're a guy who's running around trying new lakes, or you're a guy who fishes the same home lake every time you go out. If you don't fish that home lake more than once a week, your fish can be moving so much that a lot of times it feels like a new lake anyway. So sort of what goes into a day like this, I think, would be very helpful to you. Anytime I'm going to a new lake, like I said this morning, I pick them arbitrarily. Look at Google Earth, look at my mapping on the app, and if it looks good, I give it a whirl. This lake, I could see the cypress trees, I could see the standing timber on Google Earth. And then once I saw a contour line in the lake, I'm like, well, there's gotta be a boat ramp there somewhere, even though I don't see it. Let's give it a try. But I always, anytime I come somewhere new, honestly, anytime I go fishing, I fish with intention. What I mean by that is I try to come in with a plan. My plans are usually based off of history. Now, a brand new lake, obviously I have no history, right? But I have history with this sort of fishing. I've fished a handful of places that have crazy thick cover, cypress trees, standing timber. So I think back through, and in your case, if it's your home lake, think back through where you've been successful at that time of year before. Paying attention to time of year is critical, because you'll have spots that are great sometimes and they're horrible other times. But I went into this thinking through, you know, swamp type fishing, and typically I've got a couple of baits that I do really well with. It's gonna be that big Texas rig worm. That's my #1 confidence. #2 is gonna be the Senko. And then for a moving bait, it's usually a chatterbait. If it's a little more sparse, you'll also see me throw a square bill. So even though I didn't catch fish on them today, there's that chatterbait. And there's that square bill. Now, I also, once I got out here, I caught a fish on the worm, traditional June bug. Usually you're gonna see me throwing June bug, red bug, something like that. Anytime I see that dark water, that's just where I'm gonna start. When I went to a swim jig, I went to black and blue. I'm trying to fish a little bit of history. But again, it's all about having an open mind. When that cold wind started blowing, man, history says that's gonna wreck it. It's gonna shut it down. Shallow fish are gonna get lockjaw. Anytime you're this far south, if you're in the deep south and all of a sudden you get that cold snap, shallow fish are just, they want nothing to do with it. And I mean, I flipped for hours. Flipped and threw at bases of cypress trees. And I did it again for about a half hour just now, just to double check. It's still nothing. Those shallow fish were locked. So with my eyes, I could visually see areas that don't have trees. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's deeper water. So I go out and look, and sure enough, it is. The A-rig, the A-rig just happened to be in the boat. I had no intention of throwing that today, but I know the power of an A-rig when I get around fish that are shut down, right? Cold water, winter bass, it gets them. So when they shut down, it should get them. I had it rigged up with traditional colors, Pro Blue, Red, Pearl already. One thing I'll say, that X-Zone Swammer, you'll notice more and more and more as we get further and further in spring, that's the bait you see on that bait. I'm sorry, that's the swim bait you see on that rig. They're super erratic. They have a ton of roll when they're swimming, and as that water warms up, I think that helps me get fish. And in this stained water, I think that is a lot more vibration, help the fish find it. But again, I went in with a plan, fished with intention, but I stayed with an open mind. So I saw my conditions changing. I saw the lake locking down for sure. I've seen it before. So I went deeper because those fish should be the least impacted. And in your lake, maybe deeper is 6 foot instead of 2 foot. Maybe it's 40 foot instead of 20 foot. Deeper is relative. It really doesn't matter. But I went to the deepest areas I could find and I started fan casting, and that first fish honestly shocked me. Shocked me. I'm trying to fish with an open mind. I'm trying to do things that could work. But when it worked, then you're like, oh man, we might turn this around, right? And then it was just going through it over and over and over. Because again, it's locked down. It's not ideal conditions. We're not going to get a lot of bites. We're just going to keep chucking, keep chucking. And I was prepared mentally to break off some rigs. Once I got bit, I thought, man, all these trees, it's going to happen. So I also rigged up a Magdraft Freestyle. I put the blade on there because they were eating the rig, the bladed rig. I went with a bold color, and I was going to roll that around too, but I just never had to do it. I never lost a rig. Part of that was I was fishing. I would only let it hit the bottom one time. Throw that rig out, it would hit bottom, and then I'd pop it up and start my retrieve, and I'd keep it off bottom. Because the tall trees I could see, it's the stumps and the laydowns that I can't see that are going to get me. So I tried to keep that rig up, and it worked. I'm sure if I was down bottom crawling, I could catch more fish, but I'd also lose a couple $100 in rigs today, and I did not want to do that. So guys, I had a ball exploring a new lake. I hope that little insight into how I thought through it will help you, because again, fishing your local lake, fish with intention, always go out with a plan, tie on things that you think will work, try to establish a pattern. If they're not working, open your mind up and adapt. Don't just give up, and you will catch a lot more fish. In the video description, I'll link all the gear I was using, you know, like the worm, I was throwing on a Megabass, the FMJ, and a DC reel. That happened to be a Metanium DC. That's a higher end combo, but I used a DC reel on purpose. It's because I know that when I get into this sort of cover, I mean, I'm not, for all my bass fishing, I'm not the best caster in the world. I'm gonna hit some branches. It's gonna happen. And that DC is very responsive and forgiving as you're banging back through cover. It just makes it easier. And then the rig, I was throwing that on a Zodiac 7.5 heavy with a Banta, but that heavy action, because again, these fish are around cover, right? And I didn't know if there were big ones in here or not. When we hooked that big one, that was an uh-oh moment. Especially because it ate it so subtle that it honestly felt like I'd whacked a stump, but I still loaded up on it hard just in case, and then it pulled, and I'm like, here we go. And you can just tell when you've hooked a bigger one. I mean, they just bulldog differently. So I used the heavy instead of a medium heavy. A lot of times I'll throw that mini rig. Again, this is the mini. So we have the flex, the mini, and the micro. This is the one in the middle, the mini. Usually I throw that on a medium heavy, but given all this cover, I thought a heavy would be a wise choice. But again, I'll link all the gear in the description, specific colors, the baits, hooks, all that stuff for you, just to try and help you out. I hope you guys enjoyed coming along on a road trip, enjoyed going on an exploratory mission. I had a blast. If you did too, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.